All right, so in today's story, everything might feel like it's already heading in a very clear direction. If you've been following closely, you might even think you already understand what's going on. The pieces are falling into place, the tension is building, and it feels like the outcome is almost predictable. But here's the thing. Sometimes the most dangerous part of a story isn't what has already happened. It's what hasn't been revealed yet. It's the truth that's still hidden, waiting for the right moment to come out. And when that moment arrives, everything you thought you understood can completely fall apart. The next morning begins quietly, too quietly. The small house where little Lac lives looks exactly the same as it always does. Soft sunlight slips through the window, stretching across the floor in long, gentle lines. The air is calm, almost peaceful. On the surface, nothing has changed. But something inside that house is different. And more importantly, someone inside that house is different. Little Lac. She wakes up early, just like every other day. No alarm clock, no one calling her name. Her body has long been trained to wake up at this hour, like a routine she can't escape no matter how hard she tries. For years, her life has followed the same pattern. Wake up, work, survive, repeat. But today is not like the other days. She sits on the edge of her bed for a moment, not moving. Her eyes drift toward the window, but she's not really looking at anything. Because inside her chest, there's a feeling, a strange one. It's not fear, not exactly. It's not happiness either. Not sadness, not relief. It's something in between, something she can't name, a quiet instinct, a subtle warning. And deep down, without needing any proof, she already knows. It's not a good sign. She exhales slowly, then stands up and walks outside. The morning air is cool, fresh, almost comforting. She starts preparing her things. The bamboo basket, the knife, everything she needs for another day of work. Her movements are smooth, automatic, like muscle memory. But her mind feels strangely empty. She's not thinking about work, not thinking about the market, not even thinking about what she's going to do today. Because that feeling inside her is still there, quiet, but persistent. Just as she's about to leave, a voice calls out from behind her. Little Lac. She stops instantly. Slowly, she turns around. It's Quân. He's standing there just a few steps away, calm, still. His expression is as unreadable as ever. Nothing about his appearance has changed. Not his posture, not his tone, but somehow he feels different. Not in a way that's obvious, not something you can point at and explain. Just different. He looks at her for a brief moment, as if observing something, then asks in a calm voice, "Are you going home today?" The question lands softly, but it hits deeper than expected. Home? She repeats the word slowly, and in that moment, everything inside her shifts, because that word carries weight, a lot of it. It has been a long time since she allowed herself to think about home, a long time since she wanted to go back. Every visit only brought disappointment, arguments, silence, frustration, and that strange feeling that she no longer truly belonged there. But today, for some reason, one image appears clearly in her mind. Her mother, not smiling, not talking, just there. And suddenly her chest tightens. A quiet sense of unease spreads through her. "I think I'll go this afternoon," she says. Her voice is soft, uncertain. Quân nods. He doesn't ask why, doesn't react, doesn't question her decision. But if someone were watching closely, they would notice something. A flicker in his eyes, a calculation. Quick, subtle, but real. Everything is happening exactly when it should. That afternoon, little Lac decides to go home. The road is familiar. She has walked it countless times. Every corner, every turn, every small detail. But today it feels different. Each step feels heavier, slower. The closer she gets, the faster her heart beats. Not because she's tired, but because something inside her is becoming clearer. Something has happened, and it's serious. She reaches the house and stops at the door. From the outside, everything looks the same. Nothing broken, nothing out of place, but the atmosphere is wrong. Too quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you uncomfortable. She pushes the door open, steps inside, and freezes. Her entire body goes still. Because the moment she enters, she sees everything. Her mother is sitting on the floor, not resting, not relaxing, collapsed. Her eyes are red, swollen. Her face is drained of color. And in the corner of the room, her older brother sits with his head lowered, completely still. Like he doesn't even have the courage to exist in that space anymore. No one needs to explain anything. Little Lac already knows. Something is very wrong. "Mom!" Her voice trembles. Her mother looks up, and the moment their eyes meet, tears fall again. Tieu Lac. Just her name. That's all it takes for something inside Little Lac to tighten painfully. She rushes forward. "What happened, Mom?" Her voice rises, urgent, but no one answers immediately. The silence fills the room, heavy, thick. A few seconds pass, but it feels much longer. Then finally her mother speaks. "Our house. We're about to lose it." Those words don't just land. They cut straight through her. "What?" Little Lac turns sharply toward her brother. "Say something. What happened?" He trembles, his hands clenched tightly, but he still doesn't look up. "I took the land title." Everything inside her stops. "I said I was investing." A pause. "But I gambled it all away." The air freezes. "And now I owe more than 1 billion dong." Everything collapses. Little Lac takes a step back, not because of the money, but because of what it means. Their home, their only shelter, their last piece of stability. All of it is about to disappear. "How much time do we have?" Her voice is quiet now, barely there. Her mother struggles to speak. "1 day. Just 1 day. Not a week. Not even a few days. Just one." Little Lac closes her eyes, takes a deep breath. This is not the moment to fall apart. This is the moment to decide. She opens her eyes and something in her changes. "I'll find a way." Her voice is calm, but firm. Her brother suddenly breaks down. "Please, just help me this time. I swear." "Enough." She cuts him off, her voice cold. Colder than it has ever been. "How many times have you said that?" Silence. No answer, because there isn't one. For the first time, Little Lac doesn't feel weak. She doesn't feel like the one being pushed around. She turns her back and walks out, because she already knows. There is only one person who can help her now. Quân. But what she doesn't know is this. From the very beginning, he has been waiting for this exact moment. That night, the air feels heavier than usual, not because the world has changed, but because inside Little Lac, everything is shifting. She stands in front of Quan's house, the same place that once made her feel safe, the same place that, just yesterday, felt like a quiet shelter in the middle of everything chaotic. But tonight, it feels different. It feels like a threshold, a line she can't uncross once she steps over it. She doesn't move at first. She just stands there, looking at the door, thinking. Her hand slowly lifts, as if pulled by something she cannot resist. Then it stops, hovers, and falls back down again. She understands exactly what this moment means. If she walks in, she is not just asking for help. She is agreeing to something. Something she hasn't fully said out loud yet. Something she can't take back. She closes her eyes, takes a slow breath. And in that quiet moment, images begin to flash through her mind. Her mother on the floor crying, her brother broken and shaking. The empty house that might not belong to them tomorrow. And then her own life. All the days she worked alone. All the meals she ate alone. All the nights she told herself things would get better if she just kept going. But they never really did. Her eyes open. There is no more hesitation left. She raises her hand again, and this time she knocks. The sound echoes softly through the quiet night. A few seconds pass. Then the door opens. Quân stands there, calm, composed, exactly as she expected, or maybe exactly as he expected, because there is no surprise in his expression, no confusion, no question. "You're here." His voice is low, steady, as if this moment had already been decided. Little Lac feels a slight tension in her chest. "You knew I would come?" she asks, not accusing, just trying to understand. Quân doesn't answer directly. A faint smile appears on his lips. "Come in." He steps aside, giving her space. No pressure, no urgency, but also no hesitation. And that somehow feels even more unsettling. Little Lac walks in. The room is quiet. Everything is neat, controlled, almost too perfect. She sits down. Her hands rest on her lap, tightly clasped. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The silence stretches, not comfortable, not peaceful, just heavy. Finally, she breaks it. "I need money." Straight to the point. No explanation, no unnecessary words. There's no time for that anymore. Quân watches her. His eyes don't move. "How much?" "More than 1 billion. The number hangs in the air. It's large, overwhelming, the kind of number that changes lives. But Quân doesn't react. No shock, no hesitation, just a small nod. "I can help." Those 3 words should feel like relief. They should feel like hope. But instead, something tightens inside her, because she knows nothing like this comes without a price. She looks directly at him, her gaze steady. "What's the condition?" There is no fear in her voice now, only clarity. Quân stays silent for a few seconds, just long enough to let the weight of the moment settle. Then he speaks. "Stay with me." The words are simple, quiet, but they land heavily, like something final. Little Lac doesn't move. For a moment, it feels like time has stopped. "What do you mean?" Her voice is slower now, careful, because she already understands, but she needs to hear it. Quân meets her eyes. "Be mine." No explanation, no details. He doesn't need to explain. The meaning is clear. The room falls into silence again. This time it feels even heavier, because now the choice is real. On one side, her family. On the other, herself. On one side, responsibility. On the other, freedom. Her fingers tighten. Her mind feels empty, but her heart is racing. She sees her mother again, crying, helpless. She hears that sentence again. "Our house, we're about to lose it." She sees her brother, begging, breaking. And for the first time, she realizes something. She is tired, not just tired of the situation, but tired of carrying everything alone. Tired of hoping things will change on their own. Tired of believing effort is enough, because it never was. She looks up again. "Is that all?" Her voice is calm, almost too calm. Quân steps closer, slowly. The distance between them shrinks. "You think it's that simple?" His voice lowers slightly. "Staying with me means you don't leave. You don't refuse. You don't turn back." Each sentence is clear, precise, like terms in a contract. Little Lac stands still. She doesn't step back, even though something inside her is shaking. "What else?" she asks. Quân watches her carefully. This time there is a slight change in his eyes. Something softer, but still controlled. "You stay until I decide it's enough." There is no timeline, no clear ending, just a condition that depends entirely on him. Little Lac lets out a quiet breath. A faint, almost bitter smile appears. "And if I say no?" Quân answers immediately. Then I won't help. Simple, direct, no threats, but no alternatives. The silence returns one more time, and this time, it doesn't last long. Okay. The word leaves her mouth before she can stop it. Or maybe she was ready all along. Quân looks at her. He doesn't smile, doesn't react, but something in his gaze settles, as if a piece of something has finally clicked into place. I'll take care of the money, he says. Tomorrow? She nods. No questions, no conditions from her side, because she already gave everything. She stands up, turns around, and walks toward the door. Each step feels heavy, but steady. She doesn't look back. She doesn't hesitate, because if she does, she might not be able to keep going. The door closes behind her. The sound is soft, but final. Inside the room, Quân remains standing where he is, still, silent. For a few seconds, he doesn't move. Then slowly, he takes out his phone. He dials a number. Prepare the money. He pauses and inform Mr. Tai. He ends the call, walks toward the window, looks out into the dark. His expression doesn't change, but his voice, when he speaks again, is quieter. Tieu Lac, you've stepped in now, and from this moment on, there is no turning back, because what just happened was not the end of a problem. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something deeper, something far more dangerous than either of them is ready to face. And the truth is, this story has only just begun.